13 Mysterious Disappearances in National Parks. In the United States national park system alone there are more than 84 million acres, 35 million hectares, of preserved woods, deserts, mountains, and other wilderness, so it's no surprise that in the past 100 years there have been a number of cases of hikers going missing. Many of those who vanished were young children and inexperienced hikers, but some were healthy and seasoned outdoors people. But is there more to these disappearances than just kids wandering off, or hikers becoming disoriented? What could cause someone to seemingly vanish into thin air? There are two approaches people take to explaining these mysterious disappearances: earthly and supernatural. Most hiking experts would say that these missing hikers made common mistakes like taking on more than they could handle or failing to time their turn back to beat the sunset. However, some disappearances have become a focus for urban legend, online message boards, and non-fiction books. In fact, Missing 411 author and former police officer at Yosemite National Park, David Paulides, thinks something more intriguing is afoot. His books examine more than 1,100 cases of people who mysteriously vanished in United States national parks. The National Park Service doesn't collect data on how many visitors disappear within the vast expanses of these parks. Indeed, most people turn up on their own accord a few days later. In 2020, Paulides estimated that there had been over 1,600 unexplained disappearances in North America. Let's be honest, although it might be fun to imagine monsters or something spookier, no proof for any supernatural disappearance has ever been provided. But there have definitely been some mysterious disappearances both in the United States and abroad in formal, federal government-run national parks, as well as in related spaces like national forests, recreation areas, state parks, and more. Here are some of the most fascinating cases to date, starting in the early 20th century. 13. Bessie and Glenn Hyde, 1928. Bessie and Glenn Hyde were honeymooning in northern Arizona at the Grand Canyon when they vanished. They were traveling down the Colorado River by scow in October 1928 and planned to boat through the Grand Canyon. Bessie would have been the first woman ever to do so successfully. Glenn had run tough rivers before, but Bessie was a boating newbie. The couple ran across other boaters a few weeks before their disappearance, who said they got the feeling that Bessie wanted to turn back, but Glenn was pushing her on. If they completed the trip successfully, they could go on a paid lecture tour. So, this trip was more than just fun, there was money at stake. Cut to several months later, the Hyde's boat was discovered that winter, seemingly undisturbed. It was upright and full of supplies, but the couple was gone. There are many theories about what happened to the Hydes. Did they disembark and try a too difficult side hike? Did they have an argument that turned violent? Or were they abducted? There are conflicting reports about what happened to the Hydes, and more than one Bessie Hyde sighting in the years that followed. 12. Alfred Beilharz, 1938. 4-year-old Alfred Beilharz was the first recorded drowning in Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park, though whether Beilharz actually drowned is controversial. He was camping in the park with his family over the July 4th weekend when he disappeared near the Roaring and Fall rivers. Beilharz had gone with his dad to bathe in the river, and from there he decided to join two family friends at a spot about 500 feet, 150 meters, upstream of where he and his father entered the river. When everyone returned to camp, they realized that Beilharz was missing. A search began immediately, expanding to more than 100 civilian Conservation Corps members within 45 minutes, but there was barely any sign of Beilharz anywhere. A day after he disappeared, a couple hiking about 6 miles or 9.6 kilometers away from Beilharz's campsite reported seeing a boy who looked like Alfred sitting in an area called the Devil's Nest. By the time authorities arrived, though, the boy was gone. The search went on for 10 days and included 150 men, plus bloodhounds, though the size of the search party had dwindled to a dozen by the end of the 8th day. Park rangers chalked his disappearance up to drowning. 11. Catherine Van Alst, 1946. 8-year-old Catherine Van Alst disappeared from Devil's Den State Park, near Arkansas's Ozark National Forest, where she and her family were camping. Van Alst apparently was playing with her brothers when she wandered off and got lost, and couldn't find her way back. What makes her disappearance remarkable is that when she was found after 6 days wandering the woods, she was eerily calm. University of Arkansas student Porter Chadwick was part of the search party that found Van Alst. He told the Pittsburgh Press that when he found her, she walked stoically out of a cave and just said, "Here I am." She had survived on berries and spent nights sleeping in caves. Many other hikers have gotten lost in that part of the Ozarks and not been as lucky as Van Alst. 10. Paula Weldon, 1946. 6-year-old Larry Jeffrey disappeared near the peak of 12,000-foot, 3,650-meter, Mount Charleston in Humboldt-Toiyabe National Forest, just a short drive from Las Vegas. The search began immediately after the boy wandered away from his brothers, and within days the National Guard and a team of bloodhounds had joined the search. In a TV interview, David Paulides told reporter George Knapp that there were no predators afoot that day, and since the area they were in was pretty secluded, it's easy to rule out an abduction by car. "This boy just walked into oblivion," Paulides said. When Jeffrey disappeared, he was wearing light clothing, and authorities were doubtful that he could survive the cold temperatures at night. Searchers found and lost the trail a few times, and they discovered evidence that the boy had been eating insects and foraged berries along the way. Overall, around 1,000 people searched for 16 days but never found him. 8. Dennis Martin, 1969. 6-year-old Dennis Martin was on a camping trip near the Tennessee-North Carolina state line with his family in the summer of 1969. It was an annual Father's Day tradition. All of the men in the Martin family headed to Smoky Mountain National Park to camp and hike. Dennis and his brothers had planned a prank on the adults. They were going to hide separately in the bush and jump out on different sides of the campsite to scare them. It was a typical joke that should have ended with some startled shouts and then a lot of laughter. The laughter ended quickly, though, when they realized that Dennis was missing. Family, park rangers, and other hikers spread out to search for Dennis almost immediately, but he was nowhere to be found. That evening, there was heavy rainfall, which is bad news when you're trying to track a missing little boy. The search for Martin became the largest in National Park Service history. One of the people searching was Park Ranger Dwight McCarter, who had successfully tracked down hundreds of missing persons, including young children. McCarter was a seasoned tracker, and he was struck by the complete lack of any sort of tracks. Dennis seemed to have disappeared completely, leaving no trace at all. His disappearance is still a mystery. One possible lead that searchers didn't follow was a report from another family the evening that the boy went missing. The Key family allegedly heard a scream and then saw a bearman with something slung over its shoulder that looked like it could be a small child. We'll never know whether this was related to Martin's disappearance. But one thing did come out of it: the realization that having so many volunteers might have meant some vital clues got trampled on. Nowadays, searches involve less people but they have more training. 7. Douglas Legg, 1971. Douglas Legg and some of his family were heading out for a hike in the Adirondack Forest Preserve's Santanoni Preserve when his uncle spotted poison ivy and told Legg to put on long pants to protect himself. The family's cabin was a short, straight shot from where they were, but 8-year-old Legg never returned. Unlike a lot of the kids who have gone missing in national parks, Legg was very familiar with these woods. His family owned the cabin where they were staying and described Legg as a mini woodsman because they all hiked there together so often. Legg's disappearance sparked one of the southern Adirondacks' largest search and rescue missions, with more than 600 people searching the woods, but like Martin, Legg left no trail. Unlike in the Martin case, though, rescuers used dogs in their search. Some accounts describe dogs following Legg's scent over a 30-mile or 48 kilometers trail through difficult terrain. How could a young child have traveled alone for such a distance? Some searchers reported seeing bear-like tracks near the site. While black bears do drag their prey to cover, dragging someone 30 miles over difficult terrain seems unusual. The family became desperate and began suspecting each other and even their friends of abducting Legg, but the police were certain that the mini woodsman had simply gotten lost. He was never found. 6. John Devine, 1997. According to Peninsula Daily News, Olympic National Park in northern Washington state has a feature that's not as majestic as its mountain views. At least 4 hikers have mysteriously disappeared from the area in the past 25 years, one of whom was 73-year-old John Devine. In 1997, Devine planned to hike into the park from Mount Baldy. The trail is a tough 24 miles or 39 kilometers, and though Devine was elderly, he was also an experienced long-distance hiker. Devine was camping with his friend Greg Balzer. They split up on the day that Devine went missing. Balzer went off to hunt while Devine took off on a day hike. Devine never returned. The fruitless search for Devine lasted a full week until a rescue helicopter crash killed 3 people and injured 5 others. By that time, weather conditions had deteriorated, making the chances of finding Devine slim. Friends and family said that Devine wouldn't want to put people in danger on his behalf, and the search was called off. The search helicopter's crash is as mysterious as Devine's disappearance. Before takeoff, the pilot used a hand signal indicating that he was going to wait 5 minutes for conditions to improve before attempting it. A moment later, the helicopter departed vertically without warning and crashed into the side of the mountain. 5. David Gonzalez, 2004. At 8 a.m. on a July day in 2004, David Gonzalez asked his mother if he could have the car keys. There was a box of cookies in the car, and the 9-year-old wanted a treat. The car was only 50 yards or 46 meters away, and his mother watched him as he walked to the parking lot near their Big Bear Lake campsite in Northern California's San Bernardino National Forest. She turned her back for a second, and when she looked around again, Gonzalez was gone. His mother reported that she heard no sound at all when her back was turned, though she did see a beige truck speeding out of the campground around the time that her son went missing. Since there were no signs of abduction, authorities did not pursue that lead. The cookies that Gonzalez went to get were still in his family's locked van, so he never made it to the car. Rescue teams in San Bernardino County scoured the woods for Gonzalez. They found no signs of struggle or of the boy. The search went on for 9 days, but rescuers never found him alive. Almost a year later, hikers stumbled upon the boy's remains about a mile from his family's campsite. Authorities initially chalked this up to a mountain lion attack, but how could a mountain lion have silently dragged a 9-year-old boy a mile without leaving any blood or signs of struggle? The autopsy determined that any marks made to the child's remains were done by scavenging animals. 4. Prabdeep Sron, 2013. Prabdeep Sron was a 25-year-old Canadian Army reservist who disappeared from Australia's Kosciuszko National Park, located in the southeastern state of New South Wales. Sron was studying abroad in Australia in May 2013, when he decided to take a 1,700 miles or 2,700 kilometers road trip from the Gold Coast to Melbourne. Sron rented a van, drove to the park's Charlotte Pass in the snowy mountains, and no one has seen him since. The search for Sron began when the rental company discovered that the van wasn't returned. Sron hadn't told anyone what route or side hikes he was planning, and the search may have started days or even a week after he went missing, since it was the rental company that first reported the disappearance. Searchers figured out his hike plans by looking at the search history on a laptop they recovered from his van. Sron's family hired private searchers after Australian authorities called off their search after only 2 weeks. The investigators used tower data from Sron's phone and a trained dog to track his trail to a treacherous area called the Western Fall Wilderness. Just 1 day before his van was due back to the rental agency, Sron embarked on a difficult and time-consuming hike in snowy weather. Why would a trained military reservist make a choice like that? Despite a private search that went on for over a year, Sron's body has never been recovered. 3. Jacob Gray, 2017. The mystery of what exactly happened to 22-year-old Jacob Gray will likely never be solved. The athletic young man rode his mountain bike into a rainstorm in Olympic National Park in Washington in April 2017, and was never seen alive again. His bike and gear were found on the side of a trail, but Gray was nowhere to be found. This kicked off a search, largely championed by his father, Randy, who actually sold his house and closed his contracting business so that he could fully devote his time to searching for his son. Randy spent months doing that, all the while theorizing about what could have happened to his child. He considered hypothermia, accidental drowning, an accident, and so on. He also worried that burgeoning mental health issues had gotten the best of him. In August of the same year, He got the phone call that a group of researchers had found Jacob's remains and supplies higher on the mountain than anyone expected. The likely cause of death was hypothermia. 2. Cian McLaughlin, 2021. A 27-year-old Irishman visiting Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming has been missing since June 2021. The last known sighting of Dublin native Cian McLaughlin pinpoints him heading in the direction of Taggart Lake. This is located on an 8-mile or 12-kilometer trail that is very difficult in nature. When he didn't show up to work, he was reported missing. He held dual U.S. and Irish citizenship. His car was found nearby and kicked off a search that formally ended 2 weeks later. 45 helicopter searches and other high-tech tools have yet to reveal any information about his whereabouts. His family and the U.S. National Park Service have since put out a poster with a photo and details, as well as the hashtag #FindCian to keep him top of mind for visitors to the area. The disappearance is extra puzzling, as his uncle described that particular trailhead as his favorite. Another hiker reported seeing McLaughlin without a backpack, so it appeared that he had just gone out for a walk. 1. Gabby Petito, 2021. The disappearance of Gabby Petito made international headlines when her boyfriend Brian Laundrie returned from their road trip all by himself. The couple, who posted heavily about their travels on social media, had an ambitious schedule of coast-to-coast national park visits, although several fights between the pair were noticed by others, including the police, along the way. Petito's family says that their last contact with the 22-year-old was at the end of August 2021. Laundrie arrived back at home September 1st without Petito and refused to speak with police or her family. Her family reported her missing September 11th after a lengthy lack of contact. In fact, they don't believe the last text they received from Petito was actually from her. Sadly, on September 19th, Petito's remains were found in Bridger Teton National Forest in Wyoming. The cause of death was determined to be strangulation. Laundrie disappeared on September 17th and on October 20, his skeletal remains were found inside the Carlton Reserve in Sarasota, Florida. As of press time, his cause of death is still unknown. Thank you again for joining us for another video. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe and comment down below and let us know what you would like to hear in the near future. See you all again soon.